All right, hello, and welcome to the top 8 of the Madison, Wisconsin Regional Championships. I'm Mike Freeman. I'm here live with Kenny Wisdom.
How's it going, guys?
We are getting ready to get started with our top 8 match between Kyle Sucevich and our good friend Kevin Baxter. Kyle's playing a relatively typical Yveltal Garbodor deck, and Kevin is playing his unique Zoroark build. We were fortunate enough to get the list from a friend of his before we started, so we'll be able to put some insight on that as the game progresses. They've already shuffled up, flipped to see who goes first, and now we're just waiting on the go-ahead from the judges.
Yep. And it's really interesting. Kevin's actually not playing the Brutal Bash Zoroark. Or he is playing the Brutal Bash Zoroark. He is not playing the other Zoroark that copies the attack, which is really interesting because you'd think that Zoroark is just way more powerful. You know, and people talk a lot about that Zoroark versus Black Kira, Black Ballista for discarding a DCE.
So, just to keep everyone updated on what exactly we're talking about, the Brutal Bash Zoroark, that's the Zoroark that Kevin's deck is based around. It's a Stage 1 Dark-type Pokemon. His attack for 2 colorless energy does 20 damage times the amount of Dark Pokemon that you have in play. So if you have a bench full of Dark Pokemon, as well as him as active, that's a base of 120. And then Muscle Band, the tool that does 20, will make that 140. And then he could also play Lasers, which will bring that up to 170, which allows him to knock out EXs with 170 HP. And we also know that Kevin plays Bangle, which Silver Bangle is a tool that does plus 30 to EXs, so he even has the ability to hit 180. So essentially, in a perfect world, a fully powered Zoroark can knock out anything in the format, barring like some Mega EXs, which there are none of those in top 8. So the Foul Play Zoroark that we were referring to earlier is a Stage 1 that for a DCE it just copies one of the opponent's active Pokemon's attacks. And we were told by some of Kevin's testing partners that he took out his Foul Play Zoroark right before the tournament for a second Yveltal EX. So we do know that he plays a 4-3 line of exclusively Brutal Bash Zoroark, and he plays 2 Yveltal EX. He plays the Ascension Zorua, which has 50 HP, which is less than a lot of the other options, but it has an attack for 1 Darkness Energy, where you just search your deck for something that evolves and evolve it. So that's a big consistency boost for him. If he goes second and he's able to attack on his first turn, he's all but guaranteed a turn 2 Brutal Bash by using Ascension to evolve. So I'd imagine consistency played a big part in getting him to how far he is today.
And we are off. Looks like Kyle's going to go first. Verbank City is the top deck for him.
He opens with a Bouffalant, which is not necessarily going to put in a whole lot of work against Kevin's non-EX heavy deck, but we do know that Kevin plays those Yveltal EXs, so I'd imagine Bouffalant won't be totally worthless, but...
have we talked about Kyle's deck at all? His is pretty standard. Yveltal EX, 1 copy of Darkrai EX, Bouffalant, Enhanced Hammer. He does play Enhanced Hammer, but besides that, it's a pretty standard as far as I can tell. Garbodor as well. Right. Yveltal Garbodor, which I don't think the Garbodor plays much of a role here. It does shut off Kevin's Darkrai.
Dark Cloak is the only ability in Kevin's deck. Darkrai EX is Dark Cloak, so Kevin won't have free retreat throughout the game, but he does play 2 Escape Rope, so he has other ways of switching. I'd imagine Kyle is not going to hustle to get out of Garbodor this game. I'm sure he's aware that it won't be really potent, but I do think if Kyle does just get one out gradually, it might sort of throw a wrench into Kevin's ability to move his Pokemon around, but I definitely don't see that playing a huge part.
The Garbodor does turn off Kyle's Boofer as well in his own Dark Cloak, so it just might not be worth it at that point.
For sure, I could see that.
And we see
he Ultra Balls away 2 Dark Patches, which generally having an Ultra Ball and 2 Dark Patch in your hand is pretty good if you have 2 Dark Energy to discard, but unfortunately he skipped a step and just has to discard the Dark Energy right off the bat.
Yeah, that's pretty
Dark
unfortunate.
Patches.
We also see Kyle attach a Darkness Energy, play a Verbank, play a Laser, and pass the
nothing
turn
else.
back. So I see a DCE in his hand, but there's nothing that's really threatening. No supporters, and there's an Escape Rope, and now Kevin can do exactly
so
what
we're going to see that turn on
about.
Ascension. If Kevin has a supporter to play to get some bigger bench here, then we could just see a really early knockout on that Bouffalant decide our game 1 if Kyle doesn't have anything else to bench. I do see a DCE in Kyle's hand, so maybe he's just holding a supporter or holding something else because he wanted to hang on to that DCE.
It's very, very possible.
So we just see Kevin, neither player played a supporter on their first turn of the game. We just see Kevin Ascension and pass it over to Kyle. I'd imagine whatever Kyle drew doesn't seem to be terribly exciting. He's taking his time.
He hasn't drawn yet.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
He's still
must have been really unexciting.
And the draw is a Trubbish.
So he at least will, if he does nothing else this turn, he will get one more turn. We know that much.
And that that Buffon has 30 on it. It's going to go into 60 going into Kevin's turn. And Kevin will have the knockout on that with the Trubbish in play, or with, yeah. And there's a Juniper off the top for Kevin.
Wow, yeah. Definitely, when you see two players open up with hands like that where neither of them are really doing a whole lot, it is kind of a race to just see who's going to draw out of their bad hand first. And so that top deck might decide this game if Kyle isn't able to draw another basic.
Yeah, there's the knockout. And the draw is a muscle bane.
Yeah, so it looks like that might just be our game one.
There's the pass the turn, there's muscle bane and the laser. And Kevin Baxter has taken a quick game one over Kyle Sucevich.
After 5 minutes, if your game is not on that list.
So that's not exactly the kind of game that anybody wants to play.
Until round 2, that is.
But it happens. That's one of the biggest pluses of our best 2 out of 3 format. Kyle still has fairly good chance of taking this series, but if you're Kevin, you're feeling pretty confident. Time has pretty much been taken off the table. They still have a very big majority of their 75 minutes left to finish their next 2 games. So both players are probably slightly relieved in that sense, but obviously Kevin more so than Kyle.
Definitely. And Kyle is going to get to go first here, which it's relevant for sure, but I think especially versus Kevin's Ascension Zoroark or Zorwa might not actually be that big of a deal as Kevin can just go second. As we saw this game, Ascension into Zoroark and just be completely fine there. Once again, On the Bubble is brought to you by Top Cut Central. Check out topcutcentral.com and buy one of the lovely playmats that you see on your screen. We are currently at the Top Cut Central event, the Wisconsin regional that Jimmy Ballard is running, and there's Top Cut Central logos everywhere, On the Bubble logos everywhere, and it's a really, really fun event. If you ever get a chance to come out to a Midwest event, please come out and check it out. They're the most well-run events I've ever been to. And just so you guys know, we also have a pretty star-studded top 8 here. We have Dustin Zimmerman, in addition to Kyle Sucevich and Kevin Baxter, Kevin has earned his Worlds invite this year.
Yeah, Kevin actually has had just an incredible season. I'm fairly certain he won a state championship. I know this is not his first regionals top 8 this season.
Yeah, Kevin, and I mean, not much you can say about Kyle anymore. You know, a former national champion. Justin Sanchez in the top 8 of the tournament, also a former national champion. Kevin Baxter is under his Worlds invitation. Who else do we have? Dustin Zimmerman,
top 4
Worlds 2013.
Today has officially earned his second Worlds invite. He broke 500 points, not counting his Worlds points, just by making top 8 at this regional.
So even if he hadn't had top 4 at Worlds, he'd have another invite on top of that.
So a pretty similar start with Kyle in that he had the Verbank laser, and also in that he had no supporters. I'm hoping this is not gonna.
Yeah, Kyle's had his double muscle band dark patch.
I'd really like for this not to end the same way Game 1 did, for Kyle's sake. But
I mean, starting with that Darkrai gives him a few more draws, though.
Sure. And if Kevin isn't able to get that turn 1 Ascension, then that obviously slows him down to the point where Kyle might have some time to draw out of his hand. But if Kyle's hand stays as good as it is now, we could see this being the shortest series of this top 8.
Definitely.
So Kevin Ultra Balls away a Dark Energy this time around, which is definitely better than his last Ultra Ball. And to bring up again that Kevin plays a 4-3 Zoroark line, as opposed to a 4-4, which you might expect in like a deck that's centered around a specific Stage 1 Pokemon.
Yeah, definitely.
So discarding 1 off of an Ultra Ball puts him down to 2 as opposed to a much more manageable 3. But I would also assume that he plays a copy of Super Rod, given that he has a Stage 1 line in his deck, and that almost always warrants the inclusion of at least 1 Super Rod, just because recovering stage 1s is a little more difficult and a little more resource intensive than recovering basic attackers. And more basic-centric deck. Super Odd, if anyone doesn't know, is just an item that shuffles up to 3 Pokemon or basic energy from your discard back into your deck.
Yeah, definitely. And we're seeing a pretty similar start on turn 1 from Kevin, except he attached the Dark Energy to that Yveltal, so he won't be getting the turn 1 Ascension. I'm just going to go ahead and retreat via Dark Cloak into that Yveltal non-EX. And pass the turn back. Kyle's active Darkrai EX will take some damage.
Did you see his draw?
I did not see his draw, but it was a Colress. So that's going to draw Kyle 5 cards here. Definitely nice. I mean, when you're Kyle and you open up 2 hands that are just unplayable with Muscle Bands and Dark Patches, you got to be feeling pretty low. And the Colress for 5 is going to reset that. Hopefully he can draw something and we'll have a game here, but it's definitely very, very frustrating.
For sure.
So you said that Kevin plays 2 copies of Escape Rope, right?
Correct. I know when Natalie, friend of the show, good friend of Kevin, was showing us his list, I heard her say something about the escape ropes, but I didn't catch what it was, so I'm not sure if she was saying that he might be playing 1 more or 1 less than the list he showed us, but I do know that the list that we have in front of us has 2 escape rope listed. So Kyle is going to Professor's Letter here. If he has an Ultra Ball Dark Patch combo, he could make quite a bit of progress on his second turn of the game, given the outlook was not exactly
Definitely
good.
So would
Drew's opening hand. What's that?
If you're Kevin, would you, knowing Kyle's board saying, knowing he didn't have a supporter on turn 1, would you have maybe just retreated into that Zoroark
to just
you could Ascension next turn?
I'm hoping that Kevin has some sort of Dark Patch or Energy Switch. I know we just topped at the Dark Patch.
He does have a Dark Energy Discard Power as well.
So if he had some way, if he was sure that he'd be able to just retreat the Yveltal, or it's possible that since Kyle opened that lone Darkrai and looked to be drawing pretty poorly, Kevin wanted to just start powering up the Yveltal to just take some early knockouts and put pressure on Kyle's weak start. Right. So wow. So Oblivion Wing is going to take a knockout this turn, as well as get an energy out of his discard. Oblivion Wing is that non-EX Yveltal that Kevin has active, his attack. It does 30 been pretty afraid to. But yeah, and he has the laser and the muscle band, so he would have been knocking out that active Yveltal. So I would have liked to see him attach that DCE, but I definitely see the merit in not doing it. He must have been pretty confident that he was going to get a darkness.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, he said it would be an unreal possibility for him to not hit the darkness. So at that point, you're just kind of playing the odds there and saying, well, if I don't get it, I got very, very unlucky anyway. So there's not really a whole lot I could do. I think if I am Kyle, though, I think I would just attach the DCE there because I think that Kevin's deck isn't really focused around EXs, so your Buffon, which is the other card you're using your DCE for, I suppose Yveltal as well, isn't going to really matter as much. But when Kevin is building that big Yveltal, the Buffon matters, and the Yveltal EX of Kyle's does actually matter as well. So we're going to go ahead and see a retreat into that Yveltal. And passes the turn back to Kevin, who top decks, I believe, a Hypnotoxic Laser.
We are taking online registrations for the League Challenge. Please head back to the side event table to get registered online.
And I see a Colress in Kevin's hand as a supporter. There's the laser. Tails on that laser. And there's a Juniper. Choosing to get rid of a Juniper there, or choosing to use a Juniper and get rid of a Colress there seems interesting. I think I would have maybe taken the more conservative route.
For sure, especially given, I wouldn't say how far ahead he is, because he's not that far ahead, but I think he has a comfortable enough lead in this game where he could afford to go a little less aggressive. But then again, since Kyle's start has been so slow and so just inadequate in general, I can see Kevin going way more aggressive here and just trying to overwhelm Kyle. So,
definitely. If he can get a knockout on the Darkrai this turn, or even just a knockout on this Yveltal to bring himself down to even prizes, go through his deck a bit, he can definitely be in a good position.
I know that I don't think Kevin plays Pokemon Catcher. We're checking the list now.
0 copies of Pokemon Catcher.
So he doesn't have a way to take down that Darkrai, but he does have that Yveltal, the Yveltal EX on the bench that's definitely threatening that Darkrai whenever it does end up coming up to Night Spear. So Kevin is going to knock out Kyle's active Yveltal, put himself at even prizes, and then is threatening a 2-prize turn on that Darkrai if Kyle does attempt a Night Spear into the Yveltal.
And Kevin Baxter's way ahead here. I mean, Kyle still has some options. The top deck is a Juniper, so that's going to pull Kyle back into this game, but even as it is, Kevin, I feel like, is just so far ahead here. He could very easily take a pretty quick 2-0 victory over Kyle Sucevich. As we said, Kevin has earned his World's Invite already. Kyle is pretty far behind. I don't think he even has 300 championship points yet.
I don't think so either.
He's had pretty rough year. Didn't really play much this year. He told me he's not been focusing on school. So definitely, I don't even think if he wins he'll have his invite or anything. So
I don't think so either.
Just playing for the glory at this point. Maybe win another national championship.
There are very few people who can be taken seriously when they say that their only chance at an invite is doing well in nationals. But if we're going by results alone, I would not be surprised to see Kyle Sucevich in the top 8 of your national championship this year.
No,
if not the top 4, and if not the final table.
And
his board is looking a lot better than last time we checked in with old Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, he just knocked out, he's wiped Kevin's board of all the energy except...
Oh, did that Yveltal already have damage on it?
Yeah, it had 30. I didn't notice it either at first, so that was just part of the art. But yeah, it had 30 on it, which meant Muscle Band.
Yeah, Kyle did not need a whole lot to return that knockout.
With a Hypnotoxic Laser that they can play. We'll get the knockout. And Colress for 7 from Kevin. What do you think of the Colress versus Shauna debate, just in general?
I think it's easy. I love Colress.
Yeah.
I've never really felt like Shauna had a place in a lot of decks over Colress.
Video game
I know a lot of Plasma decks are playing Shauna just because they're just so aggressive that they don't want to risk getting a chorus early when they're on enough bench Pokemon to justify it. But I think any deck that doesn't want to just totally explode on turn 2 can definitely afford to play chorus just because it's so much stronger past the first few turns of the game.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. I'm a big fan. I think it depends on it. I'm a big fan of a split. If you're going to run a deck that's going to run a lot of, like for instance, Kevin's deck is planning on having a lot of Pokemon in play, I'm definitely a big fan of just playing heavy chorus, but in every other deck I like a split favoring towards Shauna, I think.
Interesting.
What did you play for this event, Mike, and how did you end up doing?
I played Blastoise. I finished at an impressive 4-4. Not really a whole lot to say about it. Most of my losses were deserved. I either didn't play best, I might have just played my way into a loss or hit a bad matchup that I should have been more prepared for. I don't think Blastoise is a very good meta call for this event, so I'm not terribly upset about it. I didn't do a whole lot of preparation coming into this, so I kind of went in with the mindset that I don't deserve to do well, and I would just be happy if I did. And I didn't, and it happens, so.
Definitely. And we're seeing Kevin. Kevin's gone through a lot of resources pretty early.
For sure. I still really am questioning that Junipering away all those things when he had the chorus in hand. And he played a computer search that turn as well, so that was a pretty resource-intensive turn for him.
Definitely.
Dark Patches to a Darkrai. And this is really hard to commentate, just having no idea, being so unfamiliar with Kevin's deck. It's way easier to just kind of interpret plays and intentions when you're watching two meta decks. It's a matchup you've seen played out before, but I think both players, Kyle more so than Kevin, are kind of having to adapt on the fly to this matchup just since it's such a unique pairing. I've noticed that Kyle has made absolutely no attempt to get out a Garbodor in either of these games. Obviously the first one is kind of irrelevant, but in this game, he's devoted all of his Ultra Balls to just trying to get attackers out and keep his board.
Yeah, I think there's not just, again, that's not much of a reason when it's going to turn off.
For sure, yeah, I do think Garbodor is more or less worthless. I just, it was worth noting since it was something we speculated about earlier about whether or not it would come into play, and it's definitely been verified that it's not going to.
And there's a Muscle Band and a double colorless on the Absol. And then Absol it can come into play here, actually. Absol is kind of a built-in counter versus Zoroark, considering that you have to have a bunch of Pokemon in play to use Zoroark's ability, and then or to use Zoroark's attack, and that just kind of powers up Absol as well.
Definitely. It's also worth noting that Absol is relatively fragile, so it's not going to be too difficult for Kevin to return that knockout, but it's still a favorable exchange for Kyle when you consider that it's just a basic trading with the Stage 1. So we'll see how that comes into play later. Both players are at 4 prizes. This game is definitely started out looking pretty bleak for Kyle. We were kind of worried we were going to see a repeat of Game 1, but it looks like this is going to be a relatively close match. Kyle plays his first Enhanced Hammer of the series. We knew that he had him in his deck, and I had a feeling it would come into play just with Brutal Bash relying on those DCEs. So we see the first one of the game. To strip a DCE off of Kevin's bench Zoroark. He does have another Zorua in play with a DCE on it, so Brutal Bash is still entirely possible this turn. It's definitely something we'll most likely see. I see that Kyle's Darkrai has some damage on it. I don't see how much it is, but that's irrelevant because if it has any amount of damage on it, Kevin should be able to knock it out pretty easily with Brutal Bash. So I'd imagine we'll see a return knockout here. He may choose to do it via Night Spear to set up just another knockout on something else, or he might take it with Brutal Bash to fit in favor of just using a non-EX to take 2 prizes.
Yeah, I was going to say, he might just go for the non-EX route, but he might go for the Darkrai route. The Darkrai already has damage on it.
For sure. I think I would rather see a Brutal Bash over a Night Spear, and that is exactly what he's going to do.
And the problem is that, I mean, for Kevin, this isn't a huge problem, but the problem that exists is that Absol can then return the KO. He needs a little bit more, right?
All he needs is another.
He has he has the Muscle Band on the
Zoroark. Has
Dark has
100 HP, right?
I thought it was way more than that. I'm not sure.
I'm fairly certain it's just 100.
I have it on my phone. Let me look. It is just 100 HP. Yeah, so he has the knockout. Kyle does with the Absol this turn with the muscle band on it, so it will not be an issue. And then that'll just put Kyle in a position where he only has 2 prizes left, so he's kind of knocked out 2 non-EXs, and then Kevin is going to have to likely knock out a non-EX, puts over 1 prize, and at this point, Kyle's definitely ahead. The top deck Juniper 2 turns ago was definitely what made this work.
But I'm not entirely sure I'm convinced that Kyle's ahead because Kevin is at 2 prizes. So if Kyle takes 1 this turn and Kevin is able to return it with a non-EX, he'll go down to 1 prize and then he just needs to take another. Wait, did we see Super Rod or no? Because actually Kevin, I think, is out of Zoroarks. I don't think he'll have a way to set another one up without Super Rod. So I may have spoken too soon on that.
He doesn't play Super Rod.
Okay, yeah, so Kevin actually is out of Zoroark. I don't think he has any way to get any more out.
Have all 4 been knocked out?
2 have been knocked out, and he discarded that one with the Ultra Ball early.
Oh, right.
So,
yeah, he cut his 4th Zoroark for the 2nd
Yveltal, yeah. Yveltal, I should really learn how to say that.
I thought it was a Yveltal for what it's worth.
So Kevin will be able to return this knockout with... No, he can't, because he can't return it with the damaged Darkrai because Kyle will just take his last 2 prizes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so he does have a Zoroark left. Then that absolutely has to be his last one. I must have just counted wrong because I know he discarded one earlier.
I think what you might have been confused about is that Kyle took a non-EX prize, but it was on a Yveltal non-EX. So
got it.
So he's gonna. Kevin can't yet return the KO, right? Because he's only gonna do 80 damage.
Yeah.
With the Brutal
Bash. So he'll need a Muscle Band or a Laser or a Pokemon.
Yeah, he has a lot of outs, I believe. And he's drawing 7 cards.
I'm not sure if I saw any.
Yeah, I think he might have just missed it there.
Yeah, shucks. He hit a Bangle, which probably stings a little bit, knowing that Bangle could have been a Muscle Band.
Definitely.
And I do know that when Natalie was telling me about his list, she mentioned something about Silver Bangle too, so I'm not sure if he just recently added a new Bangle, like an extra copy, or if he took one out, but I do know that was one of the more dynamic counts in his deck coming into this event.
I think if I'm Kyle here, I honestly just junk hunt for...
You mean Kevin?
Yeah, sorry. If I'm Kevin here, I probably just leave that Sableye active, go ahead and junk hunt. I guess for... it's so difficult because if you do that, which is what he's going to do, it appears so. But Kyle is going to take the non-EX price here, and then
with Absol, and then Kevin has no way to respond without. Yeah,
I think you probably take Laser Muscle Band here. Kevin doesn't play Pokemon Catcher.
We talk about this a lot, and I know I'm guilty of calling games too early, but I am not sure what Kevin can do here.
I think what Kevin's doing is taking 2 Laser, which I think is pretty smart because I think one of his only ways of winning is keeping a Pokemon asleep. I think that if he can... Kyle's going to take a prize this turn. And then Kevin can try and play a Laser. He gets 2 shots. Well, I guess he's getting ends now. But theoretically, he'd have 2 shots of the Laser, try and keep the Yveltal asleep, and try and 2-shot it. But
that also requires the Yveltal being active, which requires Kevin knocking out the Absol, which requires Kevin putting something active that just gets knocked out by Yveltal.
True, because he'd have to knock... Wow, yeah, that's really rough. Any time, I think that, Kyle's very happy there just to end himself to 2, and it looks... Oh, he gets to see his hand. I thought Kevin was conceding, but no, the Absol lets Kyle see Kevin's hand. And Garbodor Toxin is active. Keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah, so this decision's even harder because he won't be able to free retreat whatever he promotes.
And yeah, I think Kyle just may have pulled this game out after a slow start. And yeah, Kevin Baxter is going to go ahead and concede. So we are going to see a game 3 here at the Midwest Regional Championships Top 8. Interesting games. Very interesting games. The first game, obviously, not what anyone wants to see. Second game, about to be what not what anyone wants to see. And then Kyle Sucevich was able to kind of pull it back. Shuffling up for game 3 now, and Kevin gets to go first.
We should try to get the string back up again.
Juniors and seniors video game players.
So, as I was saying,
Are your check-in.
Kevin does get to go first here. Not sure how big of an advantage it is for him. It's kind of hard, as Mike said earlier, it's kind of hard to commentate these decks properly when it's a deck like Kevin's, which is kind of unorthodox, and we don't really know what the correct plays are. We do know the deck list, but we don't really know all of the minutia to the list and how the deck works within the format. And looking around, I don't think any other top 8 matches have finished. We have Dustin Zimmerman, Ben Potter, Justin Sanchez, Kyle Sucevich, Kevin Baxter. This top 8's just filled with talent. This entire tournament was filled with talent as well. So who are you picking, Mike?
I don't know. I feel like the first game was so hard to count, just given the circumstances. In that second game, Kyle looked to be so far behind and was able to win, so it almost makes me just want to immediately pick Kyle as a favorite, just seeing how he was able to win such a difficult game. Both of these guys are incredible players. We do know that Kevin, not to say he wouldn't be taking a match seriously, but we do know that he's like more or less playing for fun. I know that we were told Zoroark was just sort of a fun choice he may not have made if he did not already qualify for Worlds, so that could definitely be affecting his psyche in this game. He might not be at 100%. He might not be terribly concerned with winning. He might be just like a little psyched out. I know that there have been times where I've been in a Top Cut match that I knew I didn't have to win, and it became like even harder to focus, and I just sort of checked out a little early and would end up losing because of it. Obviously, Kevin is a much better player than me, so that could definitely, he could be immune to that, but it's something that's come into play before for me.
Definitely. I mean, you know, Kevin was the original innovator of the like Snorlax Plasma Yeti deck, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's pretty huge accomplishment to completely originate an archetype that ended up being so dominant in its prime. Kevin has quite a few accolades under his belt. Clearly, nobody can really measure their accomplishments against Kyle Sucevich, or very few people can, but Kevin is definitely a pretty tough contender in this matchup.
Definitely. And Ultra Ball is going to get rid of a Colress and a Dark Energy to get a Zoroark. And luckily, both players' hands have supporters in them, unlike games 1 and 2. So we'll be seeing, hopefully, let's do a good game of Bengal on the Zoroark. And there's a Juniper for Kevin. Drawing 7 cards. Did I not see an energy in that hand?
I'm not ready yet, guys.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any energy in that hand. A level ball. Have to imagine maybe get another Zoroark. And Kyle's hand can't quite see it, even though he has to support that and get a Juniper and a Colress. So hopefully we'll get some good games out of these. And there's a Zoroark. Okay, so he does have the Professor Letter. He did not draw any energy, but he had the copy of Professor Letter in his hand. And Kevin is going first here, so he can't attack with Ascension. So I could see him just attaching to the or attaching to the Sableye and just passing the turn to the Zoroark, passing the turn. Not really much that he can do outside of that. He does not have Dark Cloak active, but thankfully Sableye only has 1 retreat, so that won't come into play all too much. And Kevin looking through his discard pile. What is he preparing for? A Dark Patch. That's pretty strong. Turn 1 Dark Patch. And Dark Patch ever is an incredibly strong card, but turn 1 Dark Patch is pretty nice.
Absolutely.
And there's an attachment on the Sableye. And just to pass the turn back to Kyle. Darkness Energy is the top deck for Kyle. Playing the second Trubbish. And Kyle preparing for Professor Juniper there, getting rid of a Dark Energy, a Dark Patch, a Switch, and a Colress. if you're Kyle there, do you just call risk for 5? Or do you play the Juniper?
I think it depends. It's early enough in the game. He's getting that Dark into the discard. He's missing out on a switch, which I don't think he's really going to be hurting for. Kyle kind of controls whether or not Dark Cloak is an option. So if Kyle wants to retreat for free, he can retreat for free. He does not have to activate Garbotoxin. So I don't think that was necessarily a humongous waste of resources. Getting that Dark into the discard early might have been really good since he's going second.
Definitely.
I don't dislike
Definitely,
that play.
yeah, I don't dislike it either. There's no dark energy or any kind of energy in Kyle's hand, though once again he has played the odds and missed the energy, which, well, I don't think it's super relevant here because he only has a Sableye in play. It does put him behind still.
And not being able to junk hunt, going second is generally just disadvantageous in any situation. Junk hunt is like the only silver lining to going second, and he's going to miss out on that, which will...
Kevin also seems, while he seems very aggressive with his resources, he seems like he's very conservative with his board state. We've seen him Dark Patch to Sableye twice now, when he doesn't really need to use a Sableye in the next turn or two, just kind of always having that Sableye prepared to both retreat and junk hunt if he needs to.
That's a very astute observation, Kenny. So Kevin's board is looking quite a bit better than Kyle's. Kyle has his 2 of the 3 basics in his deck that don't attack active or in play.
He's going to get another one here. He's going to be able to fetch out a Yveltal EX off this Ultra Ball. And he discarded a Juniper off that. He has another one in his hand. And so that's getting rid of 2 Junipers this turn. So Kyle going through a fair amount of resources as well.
League challenge players. TCG.
Oh, he's playing the end. I forgot he had the end in hand. Okay, so he's... Again, we saw this in the second game. Kyle playing an end, putting himself to 6, putting Kevin into 5. Again, not really going to hurt Kevin too much. It's going to kind of reshape Kyle's hand. He didn't have anything but that Juniper in there. So what do you think that end is hurtful for the game, or do you think it helps the game? I know there's
just in general as a card?
Yeah, there's 2 schools of thought that like it helps the people to be able to pull back from losing, or that it's too frustrating because if you win, you can just lose for no reason because it's a good end.
I think that its biggest drawback, and this is actually an idea I've sort of heard from you, and I think you kind of put this idea in my head, but the fact that you have to play 4 copies, and the fact that it's used just as much as a shuffle draw for 6 as it is for a comeback card. I think if we had something like a Professor Oak's New Theory or just any superior draw card where we could afford to play no more than like 2 copies of N and use it for its intended purpose as opposed to as a draw supporter, it'd be way healthier. I've definitely I think that N would be way better for the game if there were just better draw supporters to supplement it.
That would also just allow it so that the player who gets N can draw out of it more easily rather than just top decking more Ns.
Exactly, because generally the school of thought when you're building a deck list is you need this many draw supporters, and you include N in that count of draw supporters. But then if you are only seeing your Junipers and your Coloruses early, and you take a few prizes, and all you have left is Ns, then your draw power is pretty much shot for the game. So I don't like that you essentially have to play 3 to 4 copies of N, but I do think the card is just fine as far from a design standpoint. Kevin played a whole lot of cards we were talking about, and we see him Ultra Ball for Yveltal, play a Laser and Colress. So this is going to be a pretty big Colress for Kevin. He's getting 8 cards, I believe. He doesn't have any sort of gusting effects in his deck, so I don't love that he put the Bengal down, since it's just not doing anything.
He played the Bengal last turn, I think.
Oh, did he?
I believe so. I could be wrong. I don't like that he played the Laser, though.
I agree, yeah.
He just played the Laser. I assume just to kind of get it out of his deck so he can draw a better 8 cards, but I feel like that Laser is going to be... Maybe it's not super important to the math late game, but at any time I just feel like it's better to have resources such as a protected Laser rather than just waste it versus a Trebuch. So I think that might have been a slight misstep on Kevin's part, but maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe he has something planned that I'm unaware of. And Kevin now attaching a Dark Energy to that Zoroark on the bench. Oh, he's choosing to retreat, actually. So that's why he played the Laser. It's interesting play by Kevin. I see he has a Muscle Band in hand. It's possible that we get a Confuse Ray knockout, but it looks like he's just going to go ahead and Junk Hunt. And it's really interesting play by Kevin there, choosing to... I missed what he jumped for, I apologize, but choosing to Junk Hunt instead of take a knockout.
Makes the Laser a little more understandable.
Yeah, that was obviously his plan. The problem here for Kevin is that he's at odd prizes, so that if he would have taken that knockout, he would have gone back to even prizes and kind of been in a better position in the game, but he also would have been much more susceptible to Kyle making a comeback here and losing. But at the same time, if Kyle's able to retreat this Trebuch and kind of get other stuff going, Kevin will just basically have wasted his turn. Junk hunting is very important, it can be very valuable, but he still be uneven prizes with a Trebuch on the bench with 30 damage on it, which can easily evolve into a Garbodor and kind of put it out of range of Night Spear knockouts. So interesting play by Kevin. Definitely taking the more conservative line that time.
For sure. And it's something we've even pointed out earlier, how there are times he's like Dark Patch to Sableye when we were expecting a more aggressive route. So there is, again, it just comes up that this deck is just so unusual and so new to us that we could be missing plays that he's played out 1,000 times in playtesting and
definitely
planned ahead.
And Kyle's going to get to Oblivion Wing this turn with that non-EX Yveltal. He does have the Hypnotoxic Laser and the Muscle Band in his hand.
Ooh, does he?
So if he wants it, he can take the knockout of the Sableye.
I don't see why he wouldn't.
It appears he will be doing that. Just that, in fact. And there's a Tails. Doesn't matter on my Hypnotoxic Laser because Sableye will be knocked out. And Oblivion Wing, I have to imagine, is going to attach to the... actually, I was going to say the Yveltal, but the Absol is very important as well. We saw Absol play a big role last game. And both players at 5 prizes. Interesting, this is one of the only matchups you'll see where both players will go down to uneven prizes. There's Absols and Trebuches and Yveltals versus Zoroarks and Sableyes.
Definitely.
DCE is the top deck for Kevin.
I've noticed that Kevin's Yveltal EXs have just not really come into play this game. It's making me wonder if he would have rather had that 4 Zoroark back or something else. I would have expected some big Yveltals sort of swinging into each other and doing a lot of damage, but I've noticed that neither of them have really gone that route. There's a time early in game 2 where it looked like Kevin, his path to victory might have been just going all in on a big Yveltal, but he ended up neglecting that for a more conservative approach, which I was not necessarily disagreed with, but I was just surprised to see. It just seemed like a little more of an obvious play, so clearly he had something else in mind. But are you surprised at all to see Yveltal playing such a small role in this matchup, given that they both play several copies of it?
I think I think if we saw a very long, drawn-out game, we'd see Yveltal come into play more. I think that early game, both of these players want to capitalize on the fact that they're playing non-EXs and kind of trade non-EX with each other. And then it puts Kevin in a strain. Like, I think that if we see an Yveltal war, it'll be Kevin starting it, because I think that Absol puts Kevin in a weird position where, Kevin gets an advantage from playing non-EXs, and when you, like, for instance, in this situation, if Kevin's to knock out that Yveltal on Kyle's side, he'll be taking non-EX prize, and then his non-EX, his Zoroark, which is the crutch of it, which is like the main thing in his deck, will be knocked out by a non-EX of Kyle's, and so it just kind of puts Kevin in a strange position where his advantage is kind of mitigated. So I could see then, once that line of play comes out and once the Absol is taken care of, then Kevin instituting the Yveltal war, trying to just say, hey, like, I still have more non-EXs in my deck, I can probably afford to let you knock out this Yveltal, maybe I'll get a knockout myself, and we can kind of go along that route. But we have seen both of these players focus on Darkrai a lot too. We see Kevin dark patching onto that Darkrai. I think that may be just because of all the low hit point Pokemon in both of these players' decks, between Trebushes and Yveltal non-EX has relatively low hit points, Absol has low hit points, so Darkrai might really be the key there. We see a Junk Hunt for a Laser and a Dark Patch.
Something I know.
the Night Spirit, just powering up that Darkrai.
And Zoroark has a 2 retreat cost, sorry.
2 retreat? Okay. Interesting play by Kevin there. Dark patching to that Darkrai. I guess he thinks the fear is just too much there. Attaching to the Yveltal EX with that double colorless. And I'm just going to go ahead and Brutal Bash there. He would have gotten that knockout, so I'm very interested. I guess he just didn't want to risk Kyle Juniper off the top once again.
He did have the knockout?
Yeah, because he can go DCE, Dark Patch onto that Yveltal. And then he'll have 1, 2.
Yep.
Yeah, so. I mean,
I guess since Kyle only has 2 prizes
Kyle
left.
has actual 2 prizes left. And also Kyle, I don't know if Kyle played supporter last turn, but I know he had no supporters in hand just now until he top decked the Juniper. So it's possible that Kevin could just be banking on him not hitting anything either and just being able to 2-shot here. If Kyle... Well, Kyle will definitely get this knockout, and when he does, he'll be able to just take 1 prize, putting himself into 1. Then maybe Kevin thought he could end himself to 4 and Kyle to 1, take a knockout and win the game from here. But it's going to be a close one. We'll see Kyle doing some counting. I'm not sure what he's counting up. I know he has a Juniper in hand. It's not like he has that many cards in deck, so he could be digging for something in specific.
So please be back in your seats at 1 o'clock.
Kyle looking good to discard power once again. Checking, so what Kyle's doing now is kind of counting his outs. He's just checking both players, discard pile, seeing what both of them are used. He doesn't know Kevin's deck list, but he does know. He can assume a lot about it, and he knows his own deck list, obviously, so he's very capable of just kind of determining what's left in his deck by looking at the discard piles, looking at the boards, and just saying, you know, I have a 1 in X% chance of hitting a Juniper here or a DCE here, whatever it may be.
Your call from the booth? Good, sir.
And there's the double colorless on the Yveltal from Kyle. Garbodor, Ultra Ball N, double colorless, 2 Dark Energy looks like the draw. Kyle's going to go ahead and thin his deck out of bait, get rid of that N, which is going to be pretty useless over this turn, and the Garbodor. Shuffling his deck up. Once again, we do have 75 minutes in this round, so this will be more than enough time to finish this game off. This game shouldn't last more than a few minutes.
Challenge players, if you've registered online, we're about to start.
And there's a knockout. You might wonder why Kyle doesn't want to retreat and hit with the fresh Yveltal. That's because he doesn't want to walk into a Night Spear play by Kevin. Kevin looks like he's going to Night Spear this turn, and if Kyle were to retreat, put that Yveltal EX on the bench, he would just let Kevin get 90 damage on something else and the knockdown on the Yveltal. Kevin putting the Yveltal, drawing for turn. It's a muscle band. Both players having to do some thinking here, taking their time, making sure they don't mess absolutely anything up. And so I think the problem for Kevin here is that Yveltal on Kyle's bench has 3 energy on it. It's attacking for 80 damage. Which is 140 if he attacks with a Darkrai. This is really interesting math here. And I think the thing that kind of messes it up too for Kevin is that Kyle also has that Absol, but so that the Absol can kind of hurt Kevin there, put Kevin down to uneven prizes. But you do see Kyle getting N to 1. Not really that big of a deal because he has so many resources left in it, or he's such a thin deck, and I think like the cards in his deck were like multiple supporters and like a bike, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal there. And 4 cards for Kevin. Just 1 for Kyle, did not see what that was. We see a Zoroark from Kevin, as well as a Laser, a Juniper, and 1 other card I didn't quite see. Evolving to the Zoroark there is Kevin. The problem here is if he chooses to take this knockout, so there's the knockout, taking 2 prizes for Kevin. Kyle sending up that Garbodor. Kyle draws the laser. Does that... That doesn't quite do it. There's a bicycle.
Not a bad end to one.
Does that actually... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8... Does that knock him out?
Yep. Looks like it.
Yeah, it does. The Evil Ball will knock out Kevin Baxter's lone Yveltal, their last Yveltal. And Kyle Sucevich will advance to the semifinals of the Wisconsin Regional Championship. Kyle is a Wisconsin native, I believe, so taking a close 3-game series. We will be right back with the semifinals.